talking and then we can get going. All right. Hi, folks. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. If you are here, you are here for one of Science and Society's SciComm Lunch and Learn sessions, where we bring in different speakers who are doing really fascinating things with science communication to kind of have them give you an idea of what they're doing and then have a lot of kind of interaction with you all about what they do. And so today I am delighted to introduce Dr. Efra Rivera-Serrano, who did his PhD at NC State and did a postdoc at UC Davis and is now currently a research associate at UNC Chapel Hill. He is from Puerto Rico and has kind of created a means for bringing awareness to the representation of minorities in science kind of center stage through his work with unique scientists. And so he's going to share with us today a bit of his story and what he's doing now. And next month we have two speakers coming on March 20th. That SciComm Lunch and Learn is called Listen to Your Gut. And we have Dr. Aaron McKinney and then an artist, Jude Cassidy, who have worked together to create soundscapes of changes in the gut microbiome. So all that info is on Science and Society's website. So if you are interested, you can check that out and RSVP. But for now, I will turn it over to Efra.
All right. So thank you all for being here. Hopefully the weather will cooperate with us, right? Can you all hear me fine from here? All right, so thank you for the introduction. So I'm a scientist, but I'm also a storyteller, and I do a lot of nonprofit work, so I'll start with a story. And it's a story about this young guy who bought some furniture and was putting it all together and realized that he was missing some tools to put it all together. So he went to Home Depot to buy some tools. While he was there, he was approached by the second person. And this is all that the person said was, "Sir, please take this in case you're interested." And it turned out to be a business card. And this person turned out to be a general contractor. So client number one, of course, I'm confused. This person is just shopping there for tools. Why is he getting a business card from a contractor? And when that person turns out to be a scientist. And of course, it turns out because of his race. He's a Latino. And this might sound a little bit of a joke or exaggeration, but I can assure you that that is not the case, because this was me over 10 years ago. That did happen to me. It still happens to me. So anyone here that wants to invite me to Lowe's or Home Depot, please do not. I'm still scarred to death. Because that was the year that I moved to the US. So this was my first experience here. And the furniture that I was purchasing was because I was just moving here. It is not a single incident. It happens way too often. So usually I get from police officers, you just have certain features. TSA loves me. Every time I fly, I'm flying on Sunday, so I'm already expecting it. And it's not really restricted to an area. So when I was giving this talk in California, when I was in California, they would be like, "Oh yeah, but it's the South." This happened in California. When someone asked me, "Oh, why did you move here?" I said, "Well, I just moved here a couple of months ago." And they're like, "Oh, glad you moved here. We're always hiring truck drivers in this area." So there's no geographical distinction here. It happens everywhere, especially when you're brown, covering tattoos. You get that. So that is my motivation for today's talk, and that hopefully will pave the motivation for what I'll be talking to you today. So I am from Puerto Rico, and for those of you who have been there, usually people visit San Juan, which is the capital, or if you Google Puerto Rico, this is what you will immediately come to mind. Beach is a very touristic area, highly populated. But I am not from San Juan. I am from the south, from the opposite part of the island. And I am from what you would call the boonies here. So you might not see it, but that's where I grew up. These are other houses here. So this was a little neighborhood with 14 or so houses in the middle of literally nowhere. My mom only has a 4th grade education, so it is not. I always like to have that distinction to the different sides of what Puerto Rico really is. And so that's the little house where I grew up in. And so I like to mention this because it phrases and it motivates my work every day because of where I come from. So Puerto Rico is an unincorporated territory of the USA, meaning we're all born as US citizens, but there's a lot of big differences. Our language is different. Spanish is my first language, and almost everyone speaks Spanish. Very mono-religious. Almost everyone is Christian, mostly Catholic. The median income is around 20,000, like less than a grad student if you think about it. So there's that term of gentrification does not really exist. So you don't even have that diversity in terms of income. And we're essentially all, I have 5 dogs. I'm talking dog terms. We're essentially all mutts. So we're all mixed between native indigenous people, European and African. And I'm saying this because I never experienced racism or discrimination in Puerto Rico because we're all mixed and we're all median income or low income. So coming to the US and experiencing this microaggressions, sometimes not really that micro, definitely changes your whole perspective in life. But so what was my issue? I get this question a lot of, then why do you go back and just don't have to endure all these things? And it's because when you live in an island that is 100 by 35 miles, you cannot help it but just to be connected with everyone. And so you're only trapped in a little bubble. And while there's pros and cons for everything, this was essentially my con, and is that you are not exposed to anything. Communication is limited to your little bubble. And so these are some print screens of the biggest newspaper in Puerto Rico, and you don't have to go through all those, but my point here is that all the news are essentially local news, unless it's related to Trump, and only if he's talking about Puerto Rico directly, or sports, NBA. Everything else is going to be a local news. So the Amazon can be a fire, you don't know. Australia's on fire, you don't know. And that was my problem when you live in that confined. So you might not have some problems in terms of racism or whatever because we're all mixed. If you see my mom is brown. My dad is essentially white. Like if you come here, he would just look completely white. Whereas my grandma is black. So that is a pro, but then to me it's a big con that you don't know what's going on around you. So here's my academic journey because it would also, this is my last slide on me because this is the final nail in the coffin. So I went to college in Puerto Rico, finished bachelor's in biology and chemistry. And then I came to NC State to do a PhD, and at that time in plants biology. And so during that, my first year or two, I started getting these phrases or these sentences. Your people are nothing compared to where I come from. You're lucky that you're a US citizen. Would you please stop sounding like a Puerto Rican? And my problem with this is that these were coming from my advisor. So not only am I getting it from everyone else, I'm getting it from the person who's super leading me. So needless to say, there was a lot of thought processing. So I will show this little quote from Alice in Wonderland because this is exactly what was going through my mind. So one day Alice came to a fork in the road and saw that she's her cat, and she asked, which road do I take? So the cat says, where do you want to go? I don't know. Then it doesn't matter. So because I didn't have any choice over there, I was Alice, and if it doesn't matter, I decided to leave that environment. So, and that's why on Twitter I talk about toxic academia and pursuing your dream, because I had to leave my PhD. I couldn't handle this every day, and then outside the lab too. So I mastered out, if you will, but then I reapplied. So I did get my PhD at NC State, but I changed fields and I went over to the vet school. And then I did postdoctoral work. So that's why on Twitter you're gonna see a lot of my tweets targeted about what it is to be a grad student, especially dealing with microaggressions. So I asked this question last year in March. It was a poll, PhD students and postdocs. Have you ever considered changing careers midway through your training to something completely unrelated? And so these were the results, about 2,400 votes. And if you see, either only when life gets really rough and you're thinking about leaving, or all the time, if you combine this, over 70% of grad students or postdocs have at least thought once of just leaving. And what was shocking this is that this was yesterday. I get DMs on my Twitter at least once a week about people who are considering leaving. And so this is my motivation. This is someone like, hey, Efra, I need advice. And so this is a typical DM that I get because people know that I'm open about it. So it's still a struggle. Poll was last year. I still get them, again, way too often. So my follow-up poll back in July when I was giving a talk on diversity was, have you ever experienced microaggressions and or discrimination in the workplace or institution based on your physical appearance, gender, sex, what have you? And again, the numbers are fairly close. And I'm not even going to show here the comments. There are like 37 comments. If you read them, it breaks your heart. They're just some of the most shocking things that you could ever read. From advisors not wanting you to wear makeup or complaining about your picture on the website, to all those things that add up and into deteriorating the mental health of grad students. So for those of you who do not know me, I am quote-unquote naked capsid on Twitter. So I'll use my Twitter bio to introduce myself with what I do now. So I study viruses and the cells they infect. So I tweet a lot about virology. And I'm going to talk about unique scientists, or also a scientist, which I founded last year. I am a certified personal trainer on the side, so that is my sort of hobby. And I am known as the guy who's totally buff and posts microscopy threads. And I'll show where that came from here in just a bit. And credentials help. For those of you I get this question a lot, especially when you're from a minoritized group. Otherwise, people will question everything you say. And then even my name. So I do science communication. So a lot of people was like, what is a capsid? What is a naked? So I always explain that I study viruses, and the protein shell of a virus is called a capsid. And if it doesn't have any lipids around it, it's called a naked capsid. So it offers me, I'm doing science communication from the beginning, from my Twitter handle, because I know people will ask. It's not an R-rated account. It's actually a term. And give them a way to contact you for those of you who are starting on Twitter. Opportunities like this will happen. And so I use Science Twitter for this one reason. So this person commented in one of my tweets last year, and I just screenshotted it because it nailed perfectly what Science Twitter is all about. And he says, it's how I, a non-scientist, encounter most new science topics. It provides me with jumping off points to investigate topics further and enables me to interact directly with scientists. Surely communication to people like me is a significant part of science. So this is probably like one of the best tweets that I've seen people commenting to me. So I wanted to make, it's always on my slides. And this is, again, a motivation, because when you look, I've been following like Research America, and their polls that essentially they're every other year, asking, they just do random calls and ask people, can you name a living scientist? Only a small fraction of Americans can name one, like from the top of their heads. And been doing this for a long time. So it has shifted. The results have shifted, but it used to be a lot of Albert Einstein and people who were essentially like Mendel and stuff that were not really alive. So most people, these are the people that are going to be naming, the ones that do say yes. And hopefully you'll see that except for Guro, she's the only woman here. One that is not non-white, and you have an Asian, but for the most part, this is your top answers here. Very limited diversity, and it's always going to be the people who are in the news, or always out there like Bill Nye. Like those are your typical answers, and only 33% can correctly identify a health or a medical institution. So they don't know where research is coming from. They don't know who's doing it. And then you have, in my field as a virologist, that's why then you just end up with problems with people not believing in vaccines, for example. So that is why I choose Twitter to portray what scientists really are. And yes, I talk about science communication in my research on Twitter, but I prefer to just talk about highlighting other scientists so that people do not just list all this. This list needs to be expanded. And we know this. There's plenty. If you just Google bias, science, faculty, you're going to see a lot of studies, a lot of blogs on it, whether you are LGBTQ or your gender or whether your race. It's everywhere. So this is not nothing new. It's been going on for quite a bit of time. But again, it's not until it happens to you, like day after day, that you just get tired of it. Because it, again, happening from you shopping at Depot is one thing. Coming from your advisor, that, by the way, is a Latina to begin with, that is a different problem, because we do get it from our peers, and that is the one that I'm trying to break the most, that break that barrier the most. So for those of you who've been following for a while, you probably remember this tweet. So this was in May, and again, I'm a personal trainer. I'm always at the gym. I'm posting videos of it. So I said, I'm trying to destroy your stereotype of how a scientist should look like. That was the whole tweet. This was before I did any stuff with unique scientists. I was just showing that. And so this professor, believe it or not, he's a professor, that wasn't even following me, commented. This was the comment for those of you who have not seen it. And his comment was not necessarily have something called etiquette and good laboratory practice. And just because you're unique does not mean you're useful. So I am essentially this little crooked fork right here that I laugh right now. I'm like, you know what? The amount of work that went into turning a polyfunctional fork into that, I mean, like, I'm a masterpiece. But my husband probably remembers that morning, because I would just woke up at 7 in the morning, checking my notifications and reading this. Like, my husband still can like do the impersonation of how my face looked like that morning. But I want to show this example because this will link back to the title of my talk, and it's how you can tackle problems if you just, essentially any problem, just not just in science communication. If you stop for a second and think about whatever that you study and put yourself into that, in case organism or field or particle, whatever it is that you're studying, and you ask that question. I'm going to get into that. So again, why do I care? Not only is I've been going through ever since I moved from the US, and it still happens, but it's because of, again, I'm very vocal on Twitter, and I get DMs almost daily, and so I'm here just showing 3 from people who really are struggling to, like, they don't feel like they fit in, they feel like they're being judged, or they don't know if it's typical of grad school, or is it just an extra layer of complexity just because of your differences? I don't know if it's microaggression, or just maybe they're just too sensitive. Like, and we start getting into this conversations, but, like, I mean, freaking sucks, because grad school, and even if you're done with grad school, even if you're a postdoc, and you're a faculty, we have a very challenging, demanding jobs to begin with. We don't need all these extra layers of trying to please others because of our differences. So again, I asked the question, what would a cell do? So this is what I want you all to take from today's talk. When something happens to you and you don't know how to act, think about your model system or whatever you study, and what would that thing do? So in my case, I study cells and viruses. So what would a cell do? So a little bit of science communication. So cells communicate in your body. And intercellular communication, meaning communication between this cell and this cell, is essential to essentially everything from development to control disease spread. So I study viruses, and when a virus infects a cell, they have to go into the cell in order to replicate. It would essentially kill the cell for the most part. But before that happens, and before that little guy goes down, one thing that it does is start secreting signals to the neighboring cells. And this is a key important thing in immunity. So this one will take the toll, but it will start secreting, and all these cells that are uninfected will get primed, and they'll be ready to fight. So this is a principle of how immunity works. And this communication is important because once these cells are activated, and there's going to be more viruses coming out from this cell that died because the virus replicated. Now these viruses are going to try to infect all the other ones. But now these cells are primed because they communicated, and they're able to block that. And this is a principle in my field. This is what I did my PhD on. You can see it. I'm on microscopy, so you can even see it on the slide in culture. So this little cell here that is infected prime all the other ones, and now they cannot get infected. So it's a principle, and I use this to shape the way I tackle problems. If you will, in this case, how do you deal with a comment targeting who you are from a self perspective, I might be taking the bad comment, but if I can do something to prime all the other people around me to be ready to not just take another viral infection, but to fight back, then that should be my role. So it is exactly the same principle, just slightly different. So we're going to extrapolate from me as a cell biologist to tackling a social problem. So if we extrapolate from that, how can we use communication, science communication, to prime others? How to tell people or teach them how to reply back, or how to have more confidence on who they are? How can we empower them? And how can we, not only the ones that are in our age and our level, but how can we inspire and create a welcoming environment for the next generation? Some of us, I'm okay, in my 30s, I'm okay, I'm used to it already, taking hits left and right, but how can we change the environment? And I really think the key is through communication. So how do I, again, a virologist, decide to tackle this social problem? And I'm not saying that we are going to change the world here, but we all can do something about it. So my sort of motivation every time I do science communication is you're always going to have people who are going to disagree with you. That's just Gaussian distribution, right? It's a bell-shaped curve. But you don't have to, do not limit your vision or your goals based on that bell-shaped curve, because it doesn't have to be perfect. And the perfect example, again, is me from a virus point of view, is the principle of herd immunity. So in blue are going to be vaccinated people. In yellow are non-infected but yet susceptible because they're not vaccinated. And in red are infected. So in a population, if you have a disease preventable disease, if you only have 10% of the population that is vaccinated, of course, almost everyone will get infected. About 10% are vaccinated, so they're going to be immune to the disease. And then you're going to have the little susceptible guys that are probably going to take the blame from the infected guys. So almost everyone will be carriers. Now, as you start increasing the vaccination rate, if you have 50%, you're going to have a more mosaic-like. So you're going to have a lot more people that are immune to it, all of the blue little bubbles here, but you're also still going to have a lot of infected individuals. Same things, if you keep pushing the boundary, 70% are vaccinated. Although most people are going to be immune to the disease, you're still going to have a few susceptible and a few that are going to be infected and carrying it. But the good thing about the important thing about the herd immunity is that you don't need 100% of people to be vaccinated for a disease to be eradicated. And for some pathogens, about 90% is all it takes for you to prevent that disease spread, because those individuals that are vaccinated are not only immune, but they're not host for transmission now. So it creates a bottleneck. So this is how I tackle how to break barriers and dealing with minority issues or whatever it is. You don't have to convince 100% of people to join you. You just need the majority. Because once you have the majority, by default, the other 10% in this case doesn't really matter. So I want you all to think beyond your passion, whether it's communicating your research or changing something in the world. Take a step back and look at what is it that you study and what can you learn from it besides theoretical facts. And once you can make that extrapolation, there's a lot of things that you can learn. If you're a physicist, particle collision, you can already think of it that way. If you're a chemist, reaction, catalyst, there's so many ways that you can tackle all the problems, most problems. Some problems are unfixable. If you take a step back and think about from the perspective of what nature is already doing. So that was my approach. I decided to build a platform for inclusive science communication as my vaccination tool, and to convince at least 90% of the population to join me and to fight these things. Again, as a brown guy with tattoos, gay, atheist, I get it from all the different points. So I really want to build an environment where everybody feels safe communicating their thoughts, and you're still going to have, for those of you who are online, you're going to still have the trolls commenting. You're still going to have the haters. But again, if you can push the boundaries and make them less than 10%, that's what I'm shooting for here. So in the realm of immunology, if you think about it, many of us have already been challenged with acts of discrimination, whether it's for your gender, or it's because you're close, or it's because of your accent. Most of us have already been challenged, which in the immune realm is what creates antibodies and immunity. That's why then you cannot get reinfected. So, but the question is really, how do we protect the new generations? When you have a kid, how do you protect that kid from infection? Most of us are immune to a lot of diseases, but our children are not. So my approach was, can we screen for and showcase natural variation that exists in the scientific community, just like what we do with a flu vaccine? Can we screen for flu variants and to protect the next generation? It's the exact same principle. Can we alert and prime others, just like our cells do when they see a virus, to quickly become activated, to not take the bucket of ice when you get a comment regarding whatever it is that you're being discriminated against, but in fact just to be just like yourself, communicate, be prime, and be ready to act, so when the next virus comes in, you're ready to go. If so, again, a term from vaccinology, how often should we boost these responses? Most vaccines require boosts. Like, how often you need these reminders? So this is how I envision all the social problems, because I am not a social scientist. And can we create memory, just like our cells do, to produce antibodies, to quickly react and win the battle when you are encountered with a problem? And lastly, can we in fact generate herd immunity, but for social problems? Can we push those boundaries? Got some words here, but the title is like The Birth of Unique Scientists. So after that comment from that professor, I did just that. I was the little cell who took the shot, and I just retweeted and just let everyone have the discussion. Let everyone communicate. They can do it on their own. I don't have to convince people that, hey, this person is targeting me, please defend me. That is not my goal. My goal is you all need to be aware that this will happen to you at some point, and you need to be ready for it. So that happened in May. Exactly a month later, I launched this platform. That is now uniquescientist.com, and we're also on Twitter and Instagram, also a scientist. And our mission really is to embrace diversity, showcase diversity, communicate it, just like, the flu vaccine, just show that diversity that exists in the natural world. And I'm a storyteller, share the journey of all scientists, because I don't want it to be just look at all the little pictures, we're all different, but our journeys are unique to begin with. And someone out there, whether there's a little kid or even a young trainee, needs to read that story to feel motivated, that boost. So it's an open platform. It's open. We closed admissions a couple of months ago because we got really, really busy. But we're continuing working on it. And of course the fork made it to the logo, because that is my reminder of why I do it. And our vision really is to create an atmosphere that helps others realize that their self-identity should never be a determining factor in the careers you choose. You should not just be, I'm going to do this career because there's no one in that field that looks like me. So that's what we're breaking. So we have sort of this was for season 1, and we have sort of a questionnaire of just questions about who you are, not beyond your discipline, beyond what is it that you study in your lab or in the field or in your office. What's something cool that you do? Just show that we're all humans after all. That you may have a PhD, or you may not, or you may be a particle physicist, or you might be an ecologist, or whatever it is. If you just step back for a second, we're all humans with a story, and that is the story I wanted to share. And I'm saying that because a lot of the platforms out there focus almost exclusively on, when you see a bio, oh, this person is a PI, and here is their CV and all the papers that the person published. But I really want to know what brought you here and what barriers have you encountered, because we all have. So this is sort of a snapshot of how they look like. So it's a questionnaire. People submit their answers. So this is Dr. Kat. great friend of mine. She's very active on Twitter too, talking about discrimination. She's one of the only 98 Alaska Natives with a PhD in essentially any field. So there's less than 100 people with Alaska Natives with a PhD, and she's one of them. So she talks about that journey on Twitter, and if you have not seen her giving a seminar, you definitely should if you see her, because she really shares that journey of how it is to leave Alaska as a native for grad school and being the only one on campus representing her heritage. So she's an excellent colleague. So scientists reply and answer those questions, and then we showcase them on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, what have you. And we try to make it accessible for anyone to contact them. So with just a click, they can go to their Twitter, Instagram, they can email them, they can check their website. Because I want the next generation to see that not such an abstract person of, wow, that's a goal, but like I can actually connect with this person, and if I have a question, I can contact them. And I'm showing Kat because she's actually the one that gave me that little brand. She was the one that I'm currently looking for, the guy who looks totally buff. Like it came from Kat well before I launched Unique Scientist. So this is more world. So this is all these slides is when we started. These are some of the very first people who decided to join us and you should share their story. And they're essentially from all over the world. You have people from South America, Central America, US, Africa, Europe, Australia, China, Asia, Middle East, everywhere. So this is just a snapshot. We receive a little less than 300 submissions. So that's why I had to close down the submission system, because one person cannot do it all. I have a great team that manages my social media for those two channels. Like I don't tweet from that account, but I do all the websites. So it's a lot of work, and I just have to take a break. But they're all up there. And I always tell that for the people who are teaching, or do have family, you have kids who don't know what a scientist is, or you have essentially from every field. You have biology, you have social scientists, you have everywhere. I'm working on making it more searchable for specific fields, because right now you can search by a word map. If you want to find a scientist from Mexico, then you just click on the Central America and it will take you there. But I also want to work on it and to phrase it, make it easier for people to find them by field. So it's a lot of work. I'm not gonna deny it. It took a toll last year. I was drained, but these are my new messages on my Twitter DM. So they have definitely changed. Something so small as taking time to build a website has changed the way that people are seeing themselves and believing what they can do, or maybe it's not. I don't have to fit in with everyone. I just have to be okay with myself and be ready. So every time I get a message like this, it just makes me happy, and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna take some time, because it is a lot of work, but there's a lot of people also out there that are willing to help you obtain those goals. And so before we start into discussion, go back to the initial question is, can we generate social herd immunity? And just like vaccines, we have to start early on. You have to start with kids. So you have to start introducing those thoughts of belonging from a very early age. And so I'm so thankful to have a lot of middle school and high school teachers on my Twitter that are just like this person who take our website and just show it to their students. And these 3 teachers that are very active, and they message me, and they do so much. Like we actually use some of our funds to send them books on women in STEM or whatever, just because we know there are stronger advocates. So what scientists or what teachers are doing now is creating assignments where they just ask their students, can you draw scientists, before they know anything about a website. And of course, for the most part, it's going to be a man, usually white, with crazy hair. And no matter what the classroom is at, this is always going to be your average drawing. But then these teachers are showing them the website and scroll down and pick your favorite scientist and why the story impact you. So, and that is changing, again, like a vaccination from a very early age. And so they're so kind to send me like pictures of what the kids are saying. And you start finding the keywords. It's like, it's rare to see his demographic engaged because Tyus is an African American. It got me inspired. I'm considering a career in physics, and I hope. And that is really what I want to take Unique Scientists next, is to connect with more schools. And it is changing. To me, this last one is probably my favorite, because Sophia is a non-binary scientist, and the pronouns are they, them. And I love, if you notice here, the student actually had she and then crossed it out and changed the pronouns to they, them. So someone in middle school that is already aware of not assuming pronouns is so powerful right now. And so we're getting there, and teachers are helping. I also want to, we need all the help we can get. And yes, middle schoolers need it, high school schoolers, but I think there's a lot of undergrads too that do not understand what a scientific career is, whether it's a natural science or a social science. And just telling stories of what brought you here, and having people that they can contact with if they have questions of how to join a specific department or program, and it's key here. So this is going to be sort of like my conclusion slide, and it's what can you do to help and to get better at science communication. And again, I do a lot of science communication on Twitter from the virology side, but I consider this to be science communication because it is an indirect way of me connecting people who are doing science so they can communicate between them and with younger generations. So do not leave your mind trapped in a bubble. In this case, for me, it was Puerto Rico. I had to leave because if I had not left the island, I would have never experienced the things that shape who I am now, and this platform would not exist. So sometimes you really have to take a step back and experience these things for you to see what, in this case, my race could experience as soon as they step out of your comfort zone, if you will. Because we're all part of this world. We're not in a particular country. We're not in a particular state. We're not in a particular anything. We're all in this together. Global warming is global. All these problems are global. And because they are global, we have to all engage in them. Every now and then, I just listen to the cat. Like, does it really matter? Because if it doesn't, then don't let it haunt you forever. Don't just observe, and this is specifically for social media, the ones that do science communication on Twitter or Instagram. Don't just observe. You have to participate, because these problems will affect us all in some way, whether it's directly or your family or your kids when they grow up. You don't know. All these problems are out there, and you have the power to take a stand. And by taking a stand, I don't mean that you have to go on and make a movement, because you don't have to lead a team or just follow one and dedicate time or volunteer. Sometimes your indirect support is more than enough. Someone who buys one of the Unique Scientist t-shirts or stickers gives me funds so that I can pay the website to maintain it. To me, that's more than enough. So don't think of it as I have to do all this to solve a problem. Just help the causes that you believe in. And your unique experiences and knowledge, you can use them to tackle problems. Again, just like the title, if you have any problem that you want to solve, take a step back, see it from your specific discipline, and what would your model study do in a situation like that. And that usually offers you really powerful insights into how to tackle, in this case, a social problem. And it's never too late to change the world. We're not here to, I myself cannot do it all, but again, it is a snowballing effect, and having kids be understanding of pronouns, or seeing an African American who happens to be an ecologist and they don't see that on National Geographic, all those little things that you can do add up. And so my announcement slides, I have a great team helping me manage Unique Scientists. So Naomi in England is now sort of like leading Unique Scientists, because again, I'm very open. I got burned out. I did so much with this last year. So Naomi is helping me lead the team. Jay and Steph manage our Twitter account. So again, making a lot of websites and tweeting and Instagramming takes a lot of time. So I am so thankful for people that I don't even have to log into those accounts. And if you refresh our Twitter account, there's going to be a bio for a new scientist essentially almost every day. That I don't have to do that. I have a team doing that. I have Taylor who does a proofreading. People submit their bios, but there's typos there. There's links that need to be added. So I have people editing that. Sophie does engagement on social media. Danielle responds to emails from people asking for inquiries. So like, there's a lot of people out there that want to help you if you have the right idea. Here in North Carolina, Derek Miller, who helps me with branding, stickers, and all that, because this all takes money. And the STEM squad, especially Christine over at UC Berkeley, who also designs t-shirts, and part of the funds for every t-shirt that they're sold goes to Unique Scientists, again, for website, for books to give to t-shirts, etc. So it's not a one-person job for sure. And of course, support scientists, all the people who have submitted t-shirts. Just it's been a roller coaster of emotions for sure, but it's been good. And so that's my last slide, and it's about assumptions. And your assumptions are your windows on the world, and you have to scrub them off every once in a while, or the light won't come in. So stop assuming, and we're all guilty of it. But try to catch yourself every time you're making assumptions about anything, and that's the only way that you'll grow. So, and with that, I'll take any questions that could be related to anything. But I just wanted to share that side of the story, because we're all more than just a science communicator. We're all humans, after all. So.